Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Phil Risher, and on today's episode, we're diving into how to build wealth inside and outside of your home service business with Jason Gabrieli. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jason.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here, Phil. I know we had a little technical snafu, but I am here
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
glad to
man.
be here. Thanks for
Yeah, man,
having
for
me, man.
sure. Yeah, no worries at all. So Jason and HFM, they came into my ecosystem because they specifically work with home service business owners to build wealth. And I was on their podcast and I said, hey, why don't you come on mine? Because obviously we only work with home service
Sure.
businesses and people that listen to this show are usually like $1 to $10 million. So it's a good fit. So Jason, could you take, a minute or two and just give us a quick bio of HFM, you, how you got here, what y'all do?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I am a co-owner of HFM Investment Advisors with my business partner Michael Pelosi, who I believe
Yes.
was the host on the episode that you did. And so we always like to say like we like working with business owners because we're business owners. So I have 12 employees. I know what it's like to do the payroll thing, to have to have late nights, to have to figure it to build from nothing. Like we did it and we're doing it still, and it's always a learn in progress. So like we just naturally gravitated towards entrepreneurs. When it came to who do we want to do our best work for, because we get it, we've been there, and we're learning too, and we're still coming along. So it's we have kind of a kindred spirit there. But Michael and I both started slinging life insurance. That's how we
Oh,
started in the
nice.
industry.
Nice.
He was a little before me, like right around when I was
Yeah,
born.
yeah,
But I
exactly.
did it for
That's
quite a
funny.
few years. Um, and I actually interned with Michael when I was in college.
Oh, cool.
Came out. I always say like it was May of 2009, which anybody who kind of has some recollection about the financial world, that was about the worst time maybe to ever graduate with a finance degree in the history of finance.
Yeah.
The world was like imploding, so why not sell life insurance?
Yes.
And so that was
I,
kind of how I got my
I
start.
was actually interning at Merrill Lynch at that time.
Ah, see,
Yes.
it was
Yes.
beautiful. It was a great time to be alive.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it was sporty out there for sure. All my
Yeah.
buddies who were like trying to go to Wall Street and do all that stuff was like, oh, all of a sudden those jobs are
Exactly.
gone. So yeah, so I went to join Michael with at Mass Mutual Life Insurance Company.
Nice.
Um, he'd been selling for many years, very successful, worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. And what we started to realize together was over the next couple of years, life insurance is it's an important part of your financial plan, but it's just a part.
Yes.
And a lot of times when you're in that industry and you're selling it, you find that they want you to sell it for sometimes the wrong reasons, and for
Yeah.
square peg fits in every hole,
Yeah.
and it's just not true. And so we started gravitating more and more towards full financial planning and wealth management that touches everything: taxes, estate, investments, your business, all that stuff. And so once we kind of really got some steam on that, we left Mass Mutual, started HFM probably 10 years ago, almost 12 years ago now, as an independent firm. So we don't
Nice.
have a parent company. We don't sell anything for commissions. We work a lot like an attorney or an accountant. We work for fees, and we work just for our clients. And so as those years went on, we gravitated more and more towards blue collar and trades entrepreneurs because my dad was an electrician by trade. Like those are the people we liked working with, the regular people. We don't have big egos. I don't even
Yeah.
wear, I'm not
Yeah.
wearing a
Yeah.
suit. Like it's just different. And so, we've really the last couple of years focused more and more in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So you have a background in wealth
Yeah.
management in general, and then it's like, hey, I gravitate towards these people, so let's work with them. That makes complete sense. So got a couple questions for you as far as so I used to work at a home service business. We scaled it from 3 million to 5 million, sold to private equity, and the owner got, a windfall of cash. And that is the dream outcome for most people. But I think there's this part of it which is you can still make money inside of your business and invest it outside of your business to make money. You don't have to fully pour it all back in. How do you
Without a
coach
doubt.
people on this, and what is the fine line, with that? Because I think a lot of people is on their top of their mind, like all my money's in this business. How do I build wealth outside as well? And what do you coach people on for that?
It's a great question, Phil. So it's almost like you're reading my mind here because our at HFM, our service model that works for these trades entrepreneurs is called Built Wealth. And we created something called the Built Wealth Ladder, which is basically, every entrepreneur kind of fits somewhere from rung one to rung seven on this ladder.
Yeah.
And rung one is everything's in the business. All the money goes back in the business. All my wealth is in the business. Everything's in the business, right? And rung 7 is I've sold or transitioned. I'm an old guy now. All my values are transitioned to my kids. I have
Yeah,
this big giant nest egg that I'm passing on, right? And then
exactly.
there's all these rungs in between. And so that rung 1, I always say just reaching rung 1, where you even have profits
Yeah.
is Herculean, right, for any business owner. And so just to say that you have profits and things are working, but it's getting plowed back into the business. It's understandable. There's a great book, if I could drop a book
Go
recommendation,
for it. Yeah, I love it.
called Profit
Profit
First.
first. I had Mike
And
on the
so,
podcast actually. Yeah.
yeah, he's the man. So, Profit First is just it's a neat concept. I mean, there's a lot to it. Definitely read the book. I believe he did a version for
For home service
contractors.
businesses, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put the link to the episode down below
Perfect.
where we
Yeah.
dive into home service businesses
That's
for
great.
sure. But it
And,
it
and
it's a game changer.
yeah, because it just because one of the core principles, as I'm sure you guys got into, is that just that idea that, oh, we'll have profit when we're bigger. We'll
Yeah.
have profit when we'll get there, when we have volume, when we have. The reality is, you got to have profit almost from day one,
Yeah.
right? Because you have to be building, because that's what builds a healthy business. And so we're big proponents of that. Getting people from rung 1 to rung 2 on the built wealth ladder is all about, are we getting profits that we can now pull from the business, and still have the business being operable and healthy, but now we can pull them out of the business and start to build like a second engine of wealth. Because it's great to have your business, and you said it. I mean, that's why we love working with entrepreneurs, because they're different than the typical financial
Yep.
advisor client who just saved a lot of money over a long period of time. Like, their biggest asset is not their 401k, it's the business. And
Exactly.
so still got to be that, but just from a sake of having a safety net almost, and just having a plan B and making sure that you're diversifying, right? So you have this big giant, I say most business owners are very long their own company stock, which is great, right? But you got to have diversification, and whether
Yep.
that be traditional investments, where you're literally investing in thousands of other stocks and like funds in your brokerage account, or real estate or other businesses or whatever it is. Just start to, because anything can happen.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you're starting to build those other engines of wealth outside the business and getting into that rung 2 on the ladder, where, and sometimes we try to peg it to a number. So, pulling from Profit First, like, let's figure out on a quarterly basis or monthly basis or whatever it is that's going to work for you, what percentage of the profit can we start to pull out? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Whatever it is. And let's put it in a brokerage account. Or do you have a 401k that you're funding? Because you could also save a lot of money on taxes depending on how you make that work. So if we can kind of match the building wealth outside the business with saving some money on taxes, well, that's a win all the way around. So,
Exactly.
we start to fill in those pieces by kind of forcing ourselves to start taking some money out once we have profit. Now it's about, how can we get some out, and where do we put it?
Okay, so the first rung is all your money's in your business and you're not pulling any money out. Second one, it sounds like take distributions of profit of some sort
Yeah, and you're
out.
starting to build that second engine of
Yeah.
wealth.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the next couple ones?
So the third level is, now we're getting into, okay, I've built some stuff. So I have some assets outside the business. I have the business. Things are humming. Um, but now I need to go back and say, are all the protections in order? Like, do I have the right legal entity structure? Do I have the right estate plan? Do I have the right insurance? Do I have the right, just in case? I don't want to start falling back down the rungs if something bad happens.
Yep.
And that's where you start to build a little moat, or you start to build a good, we always say, let's make sure all your footings are in place and your foundation, right?
Yeah.
Because you probably have a lot of nice things built up, but let's make sure we have the protection system around it,
What are
and
some of
really
those
capitalize
protection
on it.
systems, like a will or something, or is there other stuff that's
Yeah,
common?
yeah. One of the things, and I stole this from a consultant friend of ours, who's an awesome guy. You know Jim, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Jim
yeah.
Bradley?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Jim. So one of the things Jim does, which I think is brilliant, is he has his clients, when they first start working with him, write a letter to your spouse of what would have to happen if you died tomorrow for the business to keep it going. It's
I
like
just went on a
sometimes,
trip. I just went on a trip
yeah,
a couple months ago with my brothers, and they're younger than me. And my wife's like, "What's gonna like?" I went to Belgium, so I
yeah,
was like way across out of here, and she's like, "What should I do?" And I literally recorded a Loom video for her of like, "If I die,
yeah,
go here, do this, like
Yeah, yeah, and
group
you
video
nail it.
at
I
that.
mean, for somebody that works a W-2 job,
Yeah.
and okay, get life insurance, get your will in place, done.
Yeah.
For somebody who has a business, and that is a huge amount of their net worth is that business continues to run, then yeah, you have to have a will. But okay, so if the
Yeah.
business says the business goes to my wife, but the business is worthless
She has no
because
idea.
it went out of business the first month you were
What
gone.
if the kindergarten teacher, she's gonna have gone.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say a big part of that is having some transition plan, even if
Mm,
it's not what you're actually going to do,
yeah.
just in case. Like if something happens to you, who's writing checks to payroll? Like
Yeah.
who's doing any of that stuff? Like have something in place. And it's kind of that first step of starting to think about what I'm going to do with this business eventually anyway,
Hmm.
is what if I was not here? Then what would I do? Because then
Mm,
it would have to happen fast, right? And so
exactly.
putting that in place, that just in case oh shit plan, to make sure that the business continues to have value and that it can be sold so that your spouse or heirs or
Yeah.
survivors, can capitalize on what it was worth.
Yeah.
Um,
Makes sense. So
so
there's
that's a
some
big thing.
legal things, but then also just some practical things that's like have a
Absolutely, yeah.
plan.
Well, and there's so the legal sides, it's one if something happens to you, but it's also just when you're building and you're building and you're buying this property and you're buying this business, your legal structure of your entities
Mm,
starts to get to become a mess. And from a tax perspective, and a protection perspective, if you get
yeah.
sued, um, you want to start to clean that up if you start to gets a little messy and just unintentional.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we
Makes
see
sense.
a lot of people starting to do that work at that rung three, where like let's get some things in order, on the legal side because we have built, a decent
Yeah.
a decent amount of things up, and it's about getting it in line. So
Okay.
that's huge. And then
Great.
insurance, like I said, we don't sell insurance anymore, but we consult a lot on insurance. We want to make sure people have the right ones in place, not just life insurance and disability insurance if you can't work or you die, but also somebody sues you or somebody gets
Yeah.
hurt or keeping your property separate or whatever it is,
Yeah.
making sure that you're protected. So it's all those pieces.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. 4, 5, 6. What we got?
So before we get into, okay, let's start thinking about what is the plan for this business. And is it, and the old school, a lot of the old school was, I'm just going to work till I drop dead. And then whatever. But we see a change now. More people think, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to sell it to PE or I'm going to sell it to a strategic, which is like a competitor or a larger company, right? Um, or what we also see a lot of is I'm going to transition it internally.
Yeah.
I have a team in place and they're going to want to take it over and I'm going to sell it to them. Where I have family. We see that a lot, especially in home services and trades. My son's coming into the business, my son-in-law, my nephew, whatever. Um, and so we start to think about what's the intention,
Yeah.
and then back into how do we make that a reality, and a plan for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the timeline is, and then start to think about, okay, from a tax perspective, how do we make sure we're setting ourselves up properly to pay no more than we absolutely have to,
Mm,
rather than, hey, I sold the business and I have this giant check. Okay, well then it's
yeah.
too late to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that, and just making sure that we're planning for that type of thing, because we know, like I always say, your business is going to transition eventually. Either you're going to sell it, you're going to transition it to someone, or you're going to die. Like one of those
Yeah.
things is going to happen, and so you got to be ready.
Gotta have a
And so
plan. Yeah.
that's what rung four is what's next for the business. What's the plan?
Yeah. I'm a big Dave Ramsey guy, and he talks a lot about planning
Yeah,
for transition and like 10 years, 20 years in advance of like what is it? It doesn't have to mean that it goes that way, but at least have a plan for what that's going to
yeah.
be like. Because from a tax perspective, there's so much that goes into these assets transitioning that you could be a lot more strategic with.
I've seen people pay a lot more
Yeah.
taxes than they needed to,
Yeah.
because they just didn't do the planning ahead of time.
Yeah.
And a big thing I'll say, with rung four, just to kind of bring that in a loop is, a lot of it is if the goal is to sell the business, then let's think about how we can because what you think adds value may not.
Mm,
Like, and people say, I want to go, I want to hire a CFO and I want to acquire this building that to put, slow down. Like
yeah.
if your goal is to sell in 3 years, there are plenty of experts, which is not us. We have a great network of people who are seller reps and consultants that will help you okay, if the goal is to sell in 3 years, here's the things you should be doing
That's
to
right.
max value, because that is the most important thing.
That's
Everything
right.
else,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
also
yeah.
just have found that, we've had some of those consultants on our podcast, and we always come to the same conclusion, which is, turns out that a business that looks really attractive to acquirers because you did all the right things to max value is also just a really good business to have. So even if you
Exactly.
decide not to sell it, it's probably very profitable. It's probably very, has you built out of it a little bit, all that good stuff makes it a
Yeah.
good business for you.
Yeah, I had John Warlow on the podcast, Built to Sell,
Oh,
and
cool. Yeah.
the company I worked at was 3 million, and we took him to 5 million. Then he sold to private equity, like what I was telling you. And a lot of what we do with businesses now is helping them prepare for the exit, so that way they can talk to the strategic partner that's going to come in and explain what they've done.
Yeah.
Because just like on your side of it, you don't want it to be I get to the finish line and then it's a mess. You want it to be tight so that way you get max value for the stuff.
That's a good point. I've heard that, but it's a story. You
It's a
have to have a
story.
story of, because
Exactly.
you're selling your business literally, like a
Yeah.
sale. So you have to sell your story
Yeah.
of what you did and why it's better than the next roofing
Yeah.
company or the next whatever.
I literally went to lunch with the private equity guy and the owner, and it's me, the owner, and the private equity guy. And the
Yeah.
private equity guy says, how do you get new customers? How do you convert them into sales? How do you retarget your past customers? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, they need a story for all of these things, not just like, oh yeah, we just do some, they need a system. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
keep it tight.
Because
So
you want them to say, yeah, oh, that's good. That's what we want to see. Check
yeah,
mark, check mark, check mark,
exactly.
max value, right?
Exactly. I love it. All right. So that makes complete sense. Fifth, five.
So 5 is, hey, we transitioned or we sold or we whatever. Now we have to figure out, how am I going to live on this money, or what's next step?
Mm,
Because a lot of time, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. I'll make one up. Feels like 3/4 of the time they're getting into some other business, or they're buying another business, or they're doing. It's not. They're not just done,
yeah.
right? So,
We, 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 we
what's the plan?
we had three companies, like right when I started 7 years ago, I had three companies that I exited like each
Yeah.
year that I went with these guys and exited every single time back into another business, back into another, back into another. They can't sit still. I mean, I'm talking like 8 figures of money to them, and it doesn't matter. They
No,
can't.
because it's not the money.
It's not the money.
It literally becomes not about the money. It's just about, if you're a builder, you're a builder, right? You like
Yes.
building these things, and you like that piece of it. And so it's like, you're not going to have a hobby playing, shuffleboard at the
Yeah.
senior home, right?
Yeah.
You're going to keep building hobbies. So I feel like that is a big conversation that we have at rung 5, is like, we call it the vision build. We do a big
Mm,
whiteboarding exercise, and we say, all right, what's the what's the vision for this? So you're gonna get this big check. What Your kids are involved? Like, what do you want to do for them, if anything? Your heirs, or your spouse, or your family members, or like, what you have charitable, maybe some charitable. Like, let's put it all on there. And you want to have more businesses, or you want to buy, like,
yeah.
let's just figure out what the overall vision is, and then we take down into like the technical. Okay, well, this is how let's bring a lawyer in and figure out how we're going to structure a trust, or figure out, how we're going to allocate to some type of investment. Like, then we worry about the technical, but let's just start big picture. Like, what do
Yeah.
you want to do with this big check? Like, what is it in your mind?
Yeah.
And then we figure out the blocking and tackling.
Okay. I love it. That's very good because I mean, for from your side of things, that's more of like a coaching, visionary, strategic partner, not just like a financial wealth manager or something like that, which is
Yeah.
nice to have someone like that in your corner that can see the big picture and help you build that, which is pretty unique, I would say. It sounds like.
Yeah, I'll be honest. The way we came to that really was, we've sat in a lot of conversations with really high level, super smart attorneys and tax consultants, and investment fund providers and all that kind of stuff. And they know the technical, right? They're
Yeah.
really sharp. What gets lost is like, what they'll start right out the gate with strategy. Hey, this is an idea we have, and we're going to build this. And I'm like, we need to know what do they want? What is
Yeah.
let's start with that. And so we saw a little opportunity there, which seems simple, but in the advising space, it tends to get so
Hmm.
down into strategy and tactics so quick, uh, because to us, that's the stuff that's fun. But we've learned that, if you could just help people figure out what they want to do, and really align it with their values and their what makes them, their family and their himself, and then you bring in the technical side. That's a nice little spot we like to live in.
Yeah. I like it. All right. Number 6.
So number six, this is where we start into getting into the riding off into the sunset phase. So this is eventually when you are done, if you're done. What is it like to live off this money, and how do we structure your income and your lifestyle between the investment account and the real estate that you have, and maybe the profit pulling off of other companies you've invested. Like, how do we coordinate all that into a lifestyle for you, that's going to be comfortable and what you want, and guide you in future decision making, like what you want to do with that, with helping your kids out or your grandkids or whatever. Um, and then rung seven is where we really get a little step deeper and say, okay, if you have this huge nest egg that is eventually going to pass on, we need to make sure that, I'm assuming I should say, people want to make, because I was just having this conversation the other day. It's one thing to pass. Making money and keeping money are two different skills. And
Sure can.
and if you're a great maker of the money, what happens by usually the third generation, not
Yep.
great keepers of the money.
Yep.
And it's time and time again. The Vanderbilts are like the biggest example. At the time, I think he would have been worth like $300 billion if you
Pull
create,
it all the way
for
out.
inflation, which,
Yeah.
and still after I think four generations, it was basically gone. So
Yeah.
you just, it's, unless you instill those generations with the governance of like passing along your values and what is this money to be used for, and what, like all those pieces, you could end up with next generation family members that are very far from what you were and what you're. So we try to start getting that stuff, like legacy planning,
Legacy
like
building. Yeah.
how do we pass along the values and the work ethic and all that kind of stuff.
I read a really good book on this called Die with Zero. And
Oh,
it
I love Bill Perkins.
Yeah, Bill Perkins.
I love
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Love it.
So good. And it's not like die with $0.
Right.
It's like allocate everything accordingly so you have a plan and you're living life
Yeah.
to the fullest. It's so good.
No,
And
I love it's funny you say that, Bill, because um, we have a contingent of our clientele that are, more typical retirees, I would say.
yeah.
It did work at a job at Verizon or Comcast or wherever, saved a bunch of money in their 401k, and now they're living off of it, right?
Yeah.
And getting people to flip from being savers and being uh, fiscally responsible with their money, right?
Yeah.
Like doing the right things, to all of a sudden now spending it.
Yes.
It's almost harder to get people to spend their money than
I
it is
know.
anything else, because they've worked so hard to build it. And if
Yeah.
it's a business, you've worked so hard to build your business and your baby, and then you sold it and you got this big pot of money. Now it's like, if you're not going to go do something else, if this is, you're done now, and you're going to ride off into the sunset, like now turning that into, okay, now I have to live off this thing. And I really do want to make sure I'm enjoying my life and not just feeling like I have to pinch every penny to save it
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, for sure. When I was talking with Michael, we kind of went through some of these buckets that we look at, and
Yeah,
it lines up perfectly. So, like, we see the $1 to $3 million home service business. We call it the swamp, because in the swamp, you're basically like running around doing all this stuff yourself. You're the number one salesperson. You're trying to build
sure.
systems in your business, and from what I'm seeing from your ladder, it's like 1, 2, and 3 kind of you fit into that bucket of the swamp, where it's like
Yeah,
all your money is going to be in your business. You're constantly trying to get it in. You might get some profit that's coming out and you're trying to get there, but you haven't got
yeah,
there. Then the next one is 3 to 5 million, which that's when you really start to open up. There's more profitability. You start to see this is like, what's the next steps? How am I going to protect this asset that I really have
yeah,
and this revenue? And then 5 to 10 million is that legacy piece, which is like, okay, I'm making, $1 million a year, $2 million a year. What's the game plan for that? And then how am I gonna maybe exit at some point? And this is how we operate with businesses too. So it
yeah,
lines up exactly with that.
yeah. And it's, I don't know how often you've seen this, but occasionally we'll get this situation where people think that, that they're going to sell. Like, that's, I'm going to sell the business,
Yeah,
and they progress through the 1 to 3 to the 3 to 5, and now they're in 5 to 10, and business is running itself. They have a
exactly.
system in place. They have good leadership team in place, and yeah, they're guiding and they're mentoring, but they're also maybe doing the things that they like the best. What we
Yeah.
call unique ability. So that they're in their unique ability most of the time. They're doing the stuff that fills their cup. They're not dealing with any of the BS. And it's like, and you're making $2 million a year. It's like, and sometimes we'll challenge. I'll say, so you sell this thing. What?
Yeah.
Then what? And they're like, I'm going to build another business. I'm like, you got a pretty good where you're at right now, right? It's like, actually, it is pretty awesome. My kids are whatever, 10 and 11, like I have a lot of time to do whatever I need to do with them. It's like, do you sure you want to sell? It's occasionally they'll go, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't think I do. And they'll wait, and then maybe and I'll say, okay, we'll get a bigger multiple when you're 20 million or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's not always what you think it is. But again, building a good business that is valuable to sell is also potentially a good business to keep. So
Yeah.
there's always that yin and yang.
Yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. So let's say someone's an $8 million business, they're making 1.52 million EBITDA profit. When they sell their business for $8 million, if they go off this 4% rule, they're going to be making like, whatever, 200, $400,000 if they sell it for like $10 million or so,
Right. If
you know
you,
what I'm saying?
yeah, yep.
So basically they're making 2 million and then they have to take their lifestyle all the way down to 200,000 or whatever that is. How do you coach people through this or walk them through that exercise of like thinking about that?
That's a big part of what happens in that rung four when we're
Yes.
preparing for what is the plan for this business. A lot of it is how much would you have to get for this business to continue your lifestyle, and
Yeah.
that
Okay.
is a big eye opener. It's like, oh, well, let's add back the truck that the business pays for, and your wife's car, and and it's like, and it's like, oh yeah, well, I put myself a salary of $400,000, but I really need six or whatever it is, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, to your point, let's work backwards and let's
Yeah.
figure out how much we have to sell for. And a lot of times, to your point, it ends up being a much bigger number than they could feasibly get for their business at this point. And
Yeah.
so, honestly, it's another case for building a second engine of wealth, right?
Mm.
Because the reality is you might have a really big lifestyle that wouldn't be supported by just selling your business. And at the end of the day, it just gives you flexibility. Like
Yeah.
I've told people this since I was an advisor selling term life insurance to my friends when I was 22, right? Was if you have money, you have options. If you have no
Exactly.
money, you have no options. So if everything is in the business and all the hope of your financial future is in the business forever, you're really linked to whatever you can get for that business at
Yeah.
whatever time. And so you really limit your options and your flexibility. Whereas if you have these second, third, fourth generators of wealth, engines of wealth, maybe some real estate, investment accounts, retirement account, all the stuff that we build outside. It's like, yeah, obviously you want to sell the business. It's still probably your biggest asset, but you have other stuff there.
Yeah.
There's a lot besides just that.
Yeah. Um, One other question on this. So let's say someone's like $1 to $3 million and they have profit that they're generating, but how would you work with them to figure out how much to invest back into the business and take out?
Mm,
Because this one, I think a lot of people get stuck in, and maybe you have some way that you work with people on this.
yeah, it's a hard one, honestly, but I think that one comes back to what their vision is for the business, right? Because if the vision for the business is going back to what we said before, I want to sell this thing in 3 years. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what we're going to do with a lot of this money is we're going to go talk to one of these consultants that, like you guys,
Yeah.
that we say, okay, what would max our value? Like,
Yeah.
where would putting this money max our value? And then we figure out, well, by how much? And then we compare that to what putting money elsewhere would
Yeah.
do and grow it. We just say, okay, what's going to be worth more in 3 years? And
Yeah.
then we try to start that balance off that way. Whereas if it's transition it to, my kids, then guess what? Building that second engine of wealth is critical because transitioning to kids can mean a lot of things. Some people just, I'm just going to give it to them. Or, it might take a little while, but I'll transition, I'll be gone. Some say, yeah, I'm going to sell it to them, but it's going to be for a nominal rate. Well, whatever.
Yes.
But that means you got to have a retirement nest egg that is going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, in that case, we got to put a lot more into that outside account, into that outside, than into the business. And so, I think it depends a lot on what their objective is for the
Yeah.
business and what the timeline looks like.
Yeah, that's good. What's the goal? And then what's your timeline look like? Because then you
Yeah.
can make the best decision for whatever that looks like. Yeah, it's hard. I asked Mike when he was on, like, my business is doing 20% profit. So I can get 10% returns in an index fund and build enterprise value in my business. Like, how do I balance that? If I give the money to my business, it's get 20% back and
Mhm.
enterprise value. And he didn't really know. He said a similar thing, like,
It depends. Yeah,
it just
100%.
depends on your situation. Um, Very cool. So, is there any specific place on this ladder that most people get stuck? for home service businesses or something that's like, this is where most people fall flat?
Yeah, I would say it is getting from rung one to rung two.
Okay.
It is going from everything being the business and 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 it being all wrapped up, your net worth being comprised of the business and all the money kind of going back in besides what you pull out to live on,
Yeah.
and then transitioning to I'm going to consciously start building wealth outside the business,
Mhm.
because it also requires you to like I'm going to step outside the business for a second,
Yeah.
which I get. It's hard. I mean, again, we're business owners too, so like
Yeah.
the business is always on the brain. It's always it's not just a big part of your financial life. It's a big part of your life. It's a big part of your thought process. It's there always. And
Yeah.
so to say, okay, I'm now going to step back and figure out how else I can build wealth or protect or do all these other things that don't see. That's the other piece of it. I think. Have you ever heard the term, urgent versus important?
Mhm.
Um, all the business stuff, right? The fires that you're putting out, like that's all urgent stuff, right? But the important stuff is what am I doing with my overall life, with my family? What's
Yeah.
the point of all this, right?
Yeah.
And that is way harder to like, oh, I'm going to take Friday afternoon and I'm going to think about the future. Nobody's ever going to do that.
Yeah.
Like it's rare. And so that's really hard. And so honestly, just our meetings with our clients are an opportunity that kind of forces them to take like two
Yeah.
hours a couple times a year to just think about the future and to think about let's come outside the business. Let's come outside the every like let's re-engage with the overall objective of all this
Mhm.
stuff. Um, I
That's
think that's
good.
the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jason, thanks so much, man. I appreciate you. I love the ladder that walks people through these steps. Really good stuff. Where should people go to learn more about HFM?
Yeah,
How should
sure.
they get in touch?
Well, two things. I'm going to say that if you're okay with it, I'll
Go
shoot you a
for it.
link to add in the show notes where they
Mhm.
can download our little white paper on the ladder. They can learn
Cool.
about it, find out where they're at, and give them a little bit of taste of what they could be doing in each rung to
Yeah.
help them get to the next one. So we'll put that in the show notes, it sounds like. And then our website, hfmadvisors.com. Feel free to put that in the show notes. All our stuff's there. We have a podcast of our own and some resources, blog. We have a newsletter that we send out. I believe it's weekly now. But it is talking specifically to this group and specifically about how to go up the ladder, what to do at each rung that you might be at.
Love it. All right, man. Thanks so much for the conversation. Look forward to
My pleasure.
continuing.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
See ya.